Hey guys, and welcome to part 4 of the Call of Duty Zombies timeline. In this part and onwards, we've left our old dimensions, they've been wiped from existence, and now we're in the new dimension of the Dark Ether. Well, this will take us from the very start of the new dimension up to our most recent events in Modern Warfare Zombies. So, I think it's time to begin. In the beginning. Since the beginning of time, the first denizens of the Dark Ether worship a monolith of ancient power known as the Construct. Usually indifferent to these beings, the Construct occasionally grants a fraction of its power to an individual it deems worthy, known as the Archon. Over time, powerful beings known as Elder Gods wage war against each other for power. The first Archon wipes out a parasitic species threatening the Dark Ether. The fourth Archon smashes a moon to pieces. Fragments of this moon are later weaponized, and the remaining chunks still float around the islands of the Dark Ether. The most powerful of the Elder Gods are a clan of royalty. One such member of the royal bloodline, Pt.4 the Deathless, murders his parents and seizes power for himself. Henceforth, he is a lord of the Dark Ether. Pt.4 marries Syraxis, another member of his clan. For a time they love each other, until Syraxis bears him a child against his will. Fearing the child will one day usurp him, he subjects it to an unknown fate while forcing Syraxis to don the mask of the Sisters of Agony, wiping any memory from her past. From this point, she would be known as Syraxis the Shadow. Pt.4 discovers and completes the trials of the Construct in hopes of becoming the new Archon. However, it would reject him. This did not stop Pt.4 from developing a deep obsession with the monolith, preventing anyone else from petitioning it by sending his Sisters of Agony after them. Humanity found. Elsewhere, the Dark Ether's opposite is destroyed, with all within being banished to the Dark Ether, including the mystery box and a pack-a-punch machine. These are discovered by the Elder Gods, who now learn that there is another world beside theirs, known as Earth. Pt.4 orders General Nauticus the Conqueror to study the realm and their inhabitants, humans, for conquest. Creation of the artifacts. Syraxis and Belikar the Warlock create the artifacts, objects of power that allow a Dark Ether entity to physically and mentally bond with a human. Syraxis creates an effigy of a dragon, Belikar creates a mask, Invicta the Destroyer creates a sword, and Pt.4 creates a scepter. The Nether Wars. A notable battle takes place in the wilds of the Dark Ether, where a hermit clan resides. The battle harms much of the landscape around it. The hermit clan plead to Pt.4 to spare their lands and end the fighting, and in response, Pt.4 cruelly orders the extermination of the hermit clan and the razing of the wilds of the Dark Ether. Unbeknownst to him though, this hermit clan had a connection to a mysterious web of life, which allowed each member to pass their knowledge and power to each other. One hermit survives. Accumulating the power of a now entirely extinct people, she would forever be known as Verkana the Last. The wilds of the Dark Ether are now known as the Corrupted Lands. Belikar meets Verkana on the latter's birthstone to discuss a plot to defeat Pt.4. This marks the beginning of the resistance against Pt.4. The clans of the Dark Ether now rise up against him. Defeating the Night Legions for the first time, Pt.4 punishes a commander of the Night Legions known as Decimator by trapping him in his own shield for eternity and throwing it into the Corrupted Lands to be forever forgotten. The Battle of Obsidian Ridge occurs, Invicta flees and defects to the Resistance. Plagued with guilt and remorse, Nauticus also defects and joins the Resistance. The Resistance then launch an attack on Pt.4, which is successful, leading him to be trapped inside his own scepter and stripped of his title as Lord of the Dark Ether. However, Syraxis, Belikar, Nauticus and Invicta also become trapped in their artifacts. Outside the Dark Ether. The Middle Ages. The Society Occult is formed by individuals in contact with various entities of the Dark Ether, including Nauticus and Pt.4. Their members become some of the wealthiest and most powerful men in Europe. They also go on to write the Tome of Rituals, a spellbook of Dark Ether rune magic. 750 AD. Construction of the Abbey of the Forgotten. serving as a leper colony with those afflicted by the horrific disease being cared for by a Benedictine monastic order. November 18th, 1092, birth of Adelaide of Murian, future Queen of France. 1100. The syndicate is founded by Guy de Saint Michael. 1137. A leper revolt takes place in the Abbey of the Forgotten. Adelaide of Murian orders the construction of a keep on the site of the abbey as a homage to her late husband and king. A village begins to form at its base. 1220. Construction of the keep on the site of the abbey, now a fortress, is concluded. 1300s. Guy de Saint Michael and his 4 enforcers occupy the fortress and institute a criminal reign of terror. Guy de Saint Michael creates 4 bastard swords and their respective secret upgrades for his 4 bastard sons, hoping that they would fight each other to obtain the Obscurus Attilium after his death. He would also create a stone golem known as the Guardian, who would protect the Obscurus Attilium. Guy de Saint Michael passes away, and not one of his sons would ever attempt to claim a sword, much less the Obscurus Attilium. 1314. Jacques de Molay, the late Grand Master of the Knights Templar, is burned at the stake for heresy in Paris. 1533. After Avalon is declared a free state by papal order, the entire principality is granted to a powerful family known as the French Syndicate. 1591. A soldier known as Takeo Masaki, a Ronin in feudal Japan, gets transported into the Dark Ether through unknown means. 1770. Josiah Shem and his cult arrive in Appalachia, near the town of Liberty Falls. Once there, they meet a native tribe and steal their land and possessions. The tribe, who had built the Serpent Mound, a shrine with a statue of an ether worm at its centre, use a talisman, an antler carving containing Ethereum known as the Horned Key, to commune with their god of death within the Dark Ether. 1800s. Sir Archibald Featherington Smith is born, Alistair Rhodes is born, and Fats Malloy is born. 1810. Shem and his followers perform a final ritual calling upon Cortifex to grant them immortality. However, the ritual broke space-time and Shem's cult vanished. Somehow, Shem's spirit was transported to a liminal space inside the mansion where he was trapped in a loop, constantly searching for the Horned Key. 1885, Scarlet Rhodes is born. Alistair Rhodes meets Archibald Fotherington Smith at a dig site in Tanis and forms a friendship. November 8th, 1894, Gabriel Kraft is born. 1904. Gabriel Kraft attends a reading of Francis Barrett's The Magnus by Alistair Rhodes in Ghent, Belgium, and becomes inspired by the occult. 1908. Sir Archibald is invited to Alistair Rhodes' house, who instructs him with a mission: to travel to a burial mound in Avalon in order to find an artifact known as the Sentinel Artifact. Sir Archibald arrives at the burial mound alongside his valet and an expedition crew. They discover an underground cave system with several indications of a previous civilization, and eventually find the door to nowhere, a portal that leads to the Dark Ether Nexus. There, Sir Archibald had found the Sentinel Artifact, but it was just out of reach for him. For the duration of a month, he tried to find ways to obtain it, even by crafting the Ice Staff, but to no avail. Sir Archibald is later killed by a shock mimic who had been disguised as a decanter. May 19th, 1918, Oscar Strauss is born in Germany. The 1920s. A crisis occurs in the Society Occult, causing their leadership to split the pages of the tomb apart, spreading them across the globe. 1923. Fats Malloy is shot dead by federal agents during a party at the mansion. His spirit was then transported to a liminal space within the mansion, where it had been since then trapped in a loop, continuously searching for his hip flask. 1932. After a mining incident that killed dozens of workers, coal mining operations on Terminus Island are permanently ceased and the island is abandoned. November 10th, 1936, Gregory Weaver is born. World War II starts. September 1st, 1939, World War II begins. Sometime later in that September, Die Warheit leader Wolfram von List travels to the University of Leipzig to inform Professor Gabriel Kraft, who will be assisting him as an advisor. After initially refusing, Kraft is arrested by von List after murdering his assistant Franz. He is brought to an SS prison where he and other archaeologists are tasked with discovering antiques that would provide the existence of the Aryan race. 1940. William Peck is born. 1942. Terminus Island becomes a forward US naval base. August 23, 1942. The Battle of Stalingrad begins. November 19, 1942, the Soviets begin Operation Uranus, encircling the German 6th Army. Von List leads an SS rescue mission to resupply the troops and end the siege. January 31, 1943, General Friedrich Plaus surrenders to the Soviets, deeply affecting von List. August 3, 1943, Project Endstation is founded as part of the Eurovenus under the authorization of Dr. Kurt Deibner. Ulrich Vogel is assigned as project lead and is tasked with the creation of a particle accelerator known as a cyclotron. Construction of the site begins at Morasko in Germany-occupied Poland. The cyclotron tested. March 7, 1944, Vogel and Lucas Kurtz performed the 12th test on the cyclotron. During the test, the cyclotron malfunctions and accidentally breaches the dimensional membrane between their world and the dark ether. Creatures begin coming through the newly opened rift, causing the first outbreak. The outbreak is eventually contained, but the cyclotron continues to run without external power. The rise and fall of Kortex. March 7th, 1944, Der Anfang.
The Nazis dream of a 1,000-year Reich, but in truth they are already dead. The war machine shattered at Stalingrad, but the evil regime staggers on, desperate to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. A special battalion of SS troops scoured the globe for a supernatural means to win the war. They were led by the most dangerous man I ever met. Oberfuhrer Wolfram von List. It was he who destroyed my life and cost me my soul. Von List gathered experts from across the Reich. Archaeologists, explorers, historians, and authorities on the occult, like myself. We were forced to help them loot sacred antiquities, but none of the relics we found gave von List the power he craved. Then, something happened in Poland that changed everything. Another Nazi attempt to alter the course of the war somehow weakened the barrier between this world and the next, unleashing the forces of darkness. Many miles away, 5 of our artifacts suddenly awakened. Ancient spirits, demons if you will, beckon from these otherworldly relics, whispering a promise of power. And, of course, von List accepted. He now has the power to raise the dead, and they plan to take back everything the Nazis lost. All the troops he will ever require lie frozen in the mass graves of the Eastern Front. To stop his unholy army, they must find allies, or the 1,000-year Reich will consume us all.
Travelling with Die Warheit and Kraft, von List raises the dead bodies of the Battle of Stalingrad. Kraft seals himself in his room near Von List's office with the Tomb of Rituals and sends a distress signal to the Allies, with Special Forces arriving soon after. The Special Forces become trapped in a containment spell by Cortifex and bond with the other artifact in Die Warheit's possession. Be'lakor then sends a message calling for help into the Dark Aether, one message eventually being intercepted by Verkana, who creates her own artifact and teleports the Special Forces along with the Decimator shield to Egypt. Terra Maledicta. Special Forces arrive at Die Warheit's outpost in the Eastern Desert and discover the trapped Decimator shield. With Verkana's help, they free the Decimator, who pledges himself to their cause. Travelling to the corrupted lands of the Dark Aether, they free a trap page of the Tomb of Rituals using the Decimator shield and set up a battle against Cortifex. Shinonuma. After recovering the tomb page, Special Forces travel to Die Warheit's outpost at Okinawa and are tasked with restoring Cyraxis' memories. After summoning and battling an echo of her, as well as reassembling the relic mirror, Cyraxis' memories are fully restored. Kraft's plan nears completion as he plans to separate Von List from Cortifex using the tomb page and the mirror. The Archon. Cortifex uses a spell to split the pieces of the Pack-a-Punch, with the side effects killing most of Die Warheit's personnel. Special Forces arrive, restoring the Pack-a-Punch and using the relic mirror to separate Cortifex from Von List. Cortifex, now freed from his imprisonment, petitions the Construct once again to become its Archon. However, the Construct demands Cortifex abide by its rules and allow the Special Forces to complete its trials of sacrifice, mindfulness, and resilience. Meanwhile, Von List teleports to Kraft's room and agrees to help Kraft while at gunpoint. After the trials are completed, Kraft demands to know where his spouse is, to which Von List reveals that they had been dead for months. In anger, Kraft shoots and kills him. Immediately after, the Special Forces traverse to the Dark Aether and battle Cortifex, who has now become the Archon. They defeat and kill him, his corpse being claimed by the bottomless depths of the Dark Aether. Under the orders of Von List, the Wunderwaffe DG-2 is created by Ulrich Vogel, which is based on work previously done by Oscar Strauss. Project Endstation. March 9th, 1944, Vogel writes the 203rd entry in his diary, noting the incident just 2 days prior and its aftermath. He reveals that Berlin has taken an interest in the rift, ordering Endstation to study it further. March 12th, 1944, Vogel records a report detailing the cyclotron incident, suspecting the rift opened a rift through space-time. Radiation has begun spilling from the rift, infecting much of Endstation's men with an illness Vogel describes as living death. March 16th, 1944, Endstation discovers the element responsible for the illness, dubbing it Exo-Element 1. Vogel expresses his desire to weaponize the necrotization process to create an army of unkillable soldiers. April 3rd, 1944, construction of a decontamination chamber named Der Wessler is completed. It is capable of removing Exo-Element 1 from the brains of necrotized soldiers and restoring higher brain function. June 6th, 1944, the Normandy landings begin. August 22nd, 1944, after the loss of Normandy, Adolf Hitler orders Endstation to weaponize their findings. November 15th, 1944, after the construction of a lab under Berlin, Kurtz develops an Exo-Element 1 harvester and lore to summon and harvest the essence of tempests. November 16th, 1944, Vogel develops an Exo-1 element conversion machine that is capable of harvesting the essence of Dark Aether entities and using it to open a portal to the Dark Aether. Undead Army. December 14th, 1944, the Reichstag approves a proposal by Vogel to send a Nazi army into the Dark Aether, only for it to be unleashed later in case of Germany's defeat. It is named Operation Boulder. January 26, 1945, after the arrival of Gruppenführer Müller and Task Force Boulder, Vogel writes a letter to future Endstation scientists detailing instructions on how to open a portal to the Dark Aether. January 27, 1945, Vogel orders her personnel to evacuate Marasco and tasks Kurt with taking care of his daughter, Angelica. Task Force Boulder enters the Dark Ether, overloading the cyclotron and infesting the area with Exo-Element 1. Vogel stays behind to ensure Boulder's arrival. January 29, 1945, Vogel records a report confirming that Boulder has entered the Dark Ether. Unbeknownst to him, they would become corrupted by the Dark Ether's influence, eventually becoming undead. February 3, 1945, the 8th Guards Army of the Soviet Union arrive in Marasco, discovering the end station facility. They film their entry to the facility and are attacked by zombies. February 10, 1945, a cleaning crew led by NVKD officer Pavel Lazarev make their way onto the facility. Sergeant Kazimir Zykov is ordered by Lazarev to enter and shut down the cyclotron. In doing this, Zykov becomes trapped within the Dark Ether. Over time, he consumes the creatures around him, changing him into an elder god. He goes on to name himself the Forsaken, in reference to his abandonment inside the Dark Ether. February 19, 1945, Kraft records a personal log where he states that he intends to stay away from the occult for good, as it resulted in the loss of his companion Sasha. February 21, 1945, Kurtz and Angelica are captured by the Soviets, with Lazarev personally interrogating Kurtz. In exchange for the locations of the remaining end station scientists, Kurtz and Angelica are allowed to live inside the Soviet Union. Kurtz changes his name to Ivan Valentin, while Angelica is renamed Alexandra Valentina. In her youth, she comes to hear the voice of the Forsaken disguising himself as her father, Ulrich Vogel. March 1945, in an alternate universe where the Axis powers were victorious against the Allies, Dr. Edward Richtofen, a scientist and hero of the Reich, is transported to the Dark Ether. World War II ends, the Cold War begins. March 12, 1947, the Cold War starts. 1949, Hugo Yeager is born. April 20th, 1951, Sergei Ravanov is born. October 8th, 1954, after the collapse of the Ether universe at the end of Tag der Toten, Edward Eddie Richtofen and Samantha Sam Maxis appear in Berlin, Germany. With most of his memory being lost due to the passage of one universe to another, Richtofen is admitted to a local orphanage. The Vietnam War starts. November 1st, 1955, the Vietnam War begins. 1956, Richtofen is adopted by Kraft. April 25th, 1960, Valentina receives an acceptance letter to the Moscow Institute of Physics and Technology. Kurtz burns the letter after Valentina reveals that she has been tasked with her father to continue her work. April 27th, 1960, Valentina murders Kurtz by poisoning his tea, condemning him for abandoning her father's plan. Soviet authorities falsely conclude that Kurtz died of a heart attack. 1965, Terminus Island is left in a state of abandonment after World War II. The CIA converts Terminus Island into a top-secret outpost used for the detention of enemies of the state. 1968, Tank Dempsey, a hardened USMC soldier, is fighting in the Vietnam jungles when he is suddenly transported to the Dark Ether. May 10, 1969, Operation Apache Snow begins. Mackenzie Carver plays a role. With his time in Vietnam leaving a long-lasting psychological effect on him, he's referred to as the Stick. June 19, 1970, Valentina is recruited by the KGB. May 24, 1972, James Tobias Fletcher is born in New Zealand. 1973, Samantha Maxis graduates from Heidelberg University with a bachelor's degree in applied mathematics and a minor in linguistics. 1974, Sam is recruited into the BND. Sam Colton is murdered by the widow of one of his employees. Somehow, Colton's spirit is transported into a liminal space inside the mansion, where he has been trapped in a loop constantly searching for the inspection report. 1975. Richthofen enlists to the US Air Force and participates in the Vietnam War, flying as a fighter pilot known as the Blue Baron. Richthofen meets a CIA operative during his Vietnam time named Kruger, with whom he becomes close friends. Kruger offers Richthofen a position within the Directorate of Operations. Kruger starts dealing in secretive illegal operations with the French syndicate, funneling weapons to them and covering their human trafficking operations while pocketing the funds to himself. Mary, Kruger's secretary, meets Richthofen and the two fall in love and eventually marry. April 30th, 1975, the Vietnam War comes to an end. Omega Group founded. August 30th, 1975, Omega Group is founded by KGB chairman Yuri Andropov to identify, study and weaponize psychotronic phenomena. Comprised of specialists from Spec Group as Alpha, Vinepol and Smirch, their clandestine activities remain secret to the populace at large. April 10th, 1976, a suicide bomber attempts to enter the Soviet embassy in Ho Chi Minh City, is sensed by an Omega Group asset on site, and the terrorist is stopped and detonated at the gate, saving countless of lives in the compound. June 29th, 1976, East Germany hosts a multilateral conference for European Communist parties. A mind-reading Omega asset learns several representatives from Soviet satellite states were uniting to extract concessions from the Kremlin. Omega units quietly round up the diplomats' families in their home countries, ending the insurrection before it even started. April 7th, 1976, following a remotely placed suggestion by an Omega biocommunications asset at our embassy in Washington, US President Jimmy Carter suspends production of the neutrino bomb. April 1976, Richthofen and Mary have a child named Samuel. The Richthofens relocate from the USA to Germany. April 28, 1978, a clairvoyant Omega asset helped the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan assassinate Mohammed Daoud Khan. The asset experiences a mental breakdown and is liquidated after attempting to defect at the British consulate in Kabul. Valentina is transferred to Omega. January 7, 1979, the Iranian Revolution begins. As the CIA and BND cooperate to ensure the Tsar's safe extraction, many Westerners were being left behind. Maxis was saved thanks to Gregory Weaver's personally interfering and going off the books to rescue him. This marks the beginning of a close friendship between the two. February 4th, 1979, Tammy Lundenberg, a student working on her PhD thesis, records herself going through the history of Sam Colton Hall, denoting the various owners and incidents that have happened within it. July 16th, 1980, Tammy Lundberg reports her findings within the subterranean excavations beneath Sam Colton Hall, where she states the presence of past ritualistic ceremonies and erroneous energy signals. Mary and Samuel killed. January 1981, Mary Richthofen is made aware of Kruger's illegal dealings and begins gathering evidence against him whilst Richthofen is kept out of the loop. Mary seeks whistleblower protections before coming forward with her evidence and comes into contact with BND agent Samantha Maxis, who was then assigned case officer to her and began working to relocate Mary and her family to a secure safe house in Saxony. However, Kruger catches up to what Mary is planning and begins devising a plan to have her silenced. Using his influence within the CIA, he covertly orders Maxis to relocate Mary to a different safe house in Bremen, along with Mary's son Samuel. The order further notes that Maxis cannot have contact with either her own department or the CIA about this change. Weaver, whilst working for the CIA, receives through a secure connection an assassination order by someone posing as Samantha Maxis about a target in Bremen. He is told to complete the hit and then burn the house where the target is to dispose of any evidence, all while assuring Weaver that the wife and child of the target are outside of the premises and to not search the premises for additional intel. Although initially skeptical of the nature of these orders given his familiarity with Samantha, he nonetheless proceeds with them. Gregory Weaver travels to Bremen and proceeds with the orders from the CIA, and enters the target house, the target being Richthofen. After having presumably killed him, he tortures the house and leaves the location. Unbeknownst to Weaver, due to purposefully faulty intel, Mary and Samuel were inside the house, and he accidentally burned both of them alive. As a result of this operation, Kruger is now able to continue in dealing with his illegal operations without the risk of being exposed. Richthofen, having somehow survived the assassination attempt, is later contacted by Kruger, who insists on putting the blame on Weaver, fueling Richthofen's drive for revenge and hatred towards him. March 30th, 1981, Omega is involved in a failed assassination attempt against POTUS Ronald Reagan. May 13th, 1981, Omega is involved in a failed assassination attempt against Pope John Paul II. October 6th, 1981, Omega is involved in the assassination of Egyptian President Anwar Sadat. November 10th, 1982, Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev dies. All assets involved with the 1981 assassinations in Omega are liquidated. March 23rd, 1983, Reagan announces the Strategic Defense Initiative. March 25th, 1983, KGB Viktor Chiprov orders the reactivation of Omega Group. Colonel Lev Kravchenko is placed in charge, and Valentina is placed as Psychotronic Phenomenon Research Lead. March 26, 1983, Kravchenko orders Omega's research and development team to scour NKVD and KGB archives, hoping to task Omega with a new purpose for work. March 28, 1983, Valentina suggests that DARPA program manager William Peck could be interned and placed in charge of Omega's Exoscientific Phenomena Research Department. April 3rd, 1983, Kravchenko appoints his right-hand man, Commander Gorev, as Tactical Operations Lead, with Captain Sergei Ravanov assisting. April 11th, 1983, CIA Senior Officer Caldwell writes a report on an interview with KGB double agent codenamed Red Paul. During this interview, Red Paul reveals the existence of Omega to the United States and warns Caldwell of Kravchenko, and is searching through KGB archives, and that the CIA must act against Omega before it is too late. April 19th, 1983, Valentina reviews Omega's central database, writing a report to Kravchenko. April 21st, 1983, Kravchenko records an audio log detailing his dissatisfaction with Omega's purpose. He states that he will give them one more month before terminating Omega and reassigning their personnel. July 15th, 1983, with information learned prior 10 years ago from the Forsaken, Valentina finds the film reels recorded by the 8th Guards Army of the End Station facility. She presents this to Kravchenko. The reels are immediately flagged by Chebrikov for review due to their supernatural content. August 2nd, 1983, Chebrikov meets with Andropov and the other high-ranking officials of the Politburo for a screening of the film. During the meeting, a proposition is made to weaponize the findings at End Station. August 16th, 1983, Operation Undertaker is authorized by Omega's group's command. And that is where we will leave part 4. I know that was a lot of information crammed into the timeline, but that's what happens when we start a brand new dimension. But don't forget to stay tuned for part 5, where we move on to a new discovery and the reactivation of the cyclotron. I'll see you all then. Goodbye.